You have probably heard the phrase, two is one, and one is nothing. If you haven't heard, its essence is that we need to have a reserve in our preparation, whether it be physical supplies or planning. One must have a backup plan, and perhaps even a backup plan for the backup plan. This is what I want to discuss today. Among all the necessary things, there are those that simply cannot be too many. The good news is that most of the items I will describe won't cost you a fortune, and you can acquire them gradually instead of making one large purchase. Some of these things are truly important, while others are ones you'll be glad to have on hand when needed. I will talk about the most important of them later, but for now, let's examine what these things are. The first thing I want to mention is energy supplies. By energy supplies, I mean simple batteries for your various flashlights and radios. These can be various power sources capable of charging your household appliances, as well as portable batteries that can be connected via USB or USB Type-C to charge mobile phones, tablets, and other small electronics. It is also worth considering solar solutions with homemade installations that can be gradually improved. Here, the amount of energy reserves is truly limitless. I have several different power sources, portable batteries, and plenty of batteries. In a situation where the electrical grid is down, you will need much more energy than you think, so it's better to have as many different reserves as possible. Besides energy supplies, it's important to think about fuel storage as well. This is also a form of stored energy. You must have fuel for cars and generators, as well as a fuel stabilizer. You can easily store 20 to 30 liters or more of gasoline, periodically refreshing it to prevent it from spoiling. You should also have propane supplies of different sizes, for outdoor grills, for small grills like Coleman, and even for compact camping stoves that screw onto small canisters. Don't forget about firewood. Even if you don't have a fireplace, it's worth having a small supply, at least half a cubic meter. You can relatively cheaply buy an outdoor fireplace or simply dig a pit in the backyard to cook or light a fire. If you have a fireplace, the more firewood you can store, the better. Firewood is one of those resources that can be found around. Neighborhood usually doesn't require elaborate conditions. It just needs to be adequately prepared. If you have a spirit stove, you can use denatured alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, or even regular alcohol like Everclear. In addition, there are stoves and butane canisters if you have a stove, for example, an Iwatani or a gas one. These stoves make indoor cooking very convenient, and the fuel canisters can last a long time. Thus, it is worth considering these options. There is never too much fuel, as it is difficult to predict how much you will need and how long the emergency will last. Next, we have what I call connecting items. These are items that can be kept on hand, like ropes, paracord for example, popular among preppers, or wire, including regular metal wire. Various tapes and glues, as well as ties, are also useful. These supplies can be very important in an emergency situation. You never know how many materials you'll need. For instance, to seal windows or holes in the house when you don't have the usual tools at hand. Having enough of these items will prove worthwhile, and they can be accumulated over time. Another important point is money. I'm not talking about $1 million in the bank. That's unattainable for most. It's important to have cash, and if possible to invest a little in gold and silver. These metals can help in the event of an economic crisis or hyperinflation, if the value of the dollar decreases. Cash, on the other hand, can lose value in hyperinflation, but in most scenarios we may face, cash will be very important. If there is a power outage or another situation where access to bank funds is impossible, having cash will become critically important. This applies to both small amounts in a wallet and storing large reserves of cash at home, in a safe or another secure place. Silver and gold are roughly the same. Silver is a bit cheaper and likely more acceptable in some situations. However, it is important to keep an eye on your finances and understand how you can use your money in these situations. The next point is fire-starting supplies. It's easy to go overboard here. I mentioned the tendency to hoard, and you don't need boxes full of lighters and matches. On the other hand, these items could become good barter goods, as people will need supplies for starting a fire. You don't need 500 lighters, but ultimately, it's up to you how many to keep. These items are important not only for you but for others as well. Lighters take up little space, and you can gradually accumulate them, a few at a time, and soon you'll have a decent supply. You probably never think, I have too many lighters. At least I wouldn't think so. These things are important because you never know when they might be needed. The next item is light sources. This relates to your electricity needs and fuel supplies. You can never have too many light sources. I don't even know how many flashlights I have. Probably no less than 100, stored in various boxes and places throughout the house, in cars, in the attic, everywhere. Flashlights and headlamps are also important. Headlamps are convenient as they free up your hands, which is necessary in various situations when you need both hands and don't want to hold a flashlight in your mouth. For example, when working on cars or exploring terrain. Headlamps are indeed very convenient, and many of them are inexpensive. I have a few good ones, and many not very high quality, but flashlights and headlamps are important. You can also have oil lamps, which are also related to fuel supplies. Oil lamps can be used, but candles are something that should always be on hand. They can serve as a last resort, but they are never superfluous. Candles can be stored for a very long time, just like oil for lamps. If you have the opportunity, gather a box of various lanterns and headlamps. I have several boxes of lanterns and one with different candles. All of this will be very important, and you must have enough sources of light because once the sun sets, there is nothing to do without light. The next item is first aid kits. I don't mean to have hundreds of band-aids, but there are a few medical supplies that have a long shelf life, and you will use them more than you think. For example, Lisa has horses, and my wife also has a couple of horses. One of them has a severe cut on its leg, and she has a large first aid kit for horses. She used up all the bandages in the kit and needed more, so it's always good to have as many bandages as possible. Other bandages and adhesive plasters, if stored properly, can last a very long time. Even if you have some that are expired by several years, you can use them for training and practice. This is not something to throw away. It's something you will actually be able to use. When the moment comes and you have injuries greater than a paper cut or a small scrape, you will be glad you have more than you thought, as you will likely need it. The next item is hand tools and fasteners. Over the past few decades, I have gathered quite a large collection of tools, and I mentioned this in one of my recent videos. These hand tools can be very important, along with some battery-powered tools if you have the ability to charge them. But having hammers, saws, drills, socket sets, and wrenches is really important because you never know when you'll need these things. If you have no electricity or couldn't charge your electric tools, you will need these hand tools to get the job done. If you can't connect a handsaw, you'll need to take a saw or something similar to cut wood for closing windows or anything else you might need. Besides gathering hand tools, I also collected a lot of fasteners, whether hinges, nails, screws, bolts, and similar items. You never know what might come in handy in a situation and when it might be needed. Therefore, it's always good to have enough of these things on hand, ready for use. I constantly go through this. This doesn't necessarily have to be related to disaster or emergency. It could simply be a need for a certain bolt or to secure a board. In various situations where you can't go to the store and buy what you need, having all of this at home will be very helpful. The next item is hygiene products. There are some things you shouldn't stockpile too much because some of these products have an expiration date. But when it comes to toilet paper, its supplies will never be excessive. The only limitation with toilet paper is the space where you store it. Toilet paper lasts a long time, and you will use it anyway. You also have feminine hygiene products. Hygiene items are something you may have a lot of, but depending on your situation and family composition, there can never be too many. This list includes solid soaps. Some modern liquid soaps can spoil over time, but solid soaps can be stored for a very long time. This is something worth including in your daily care. Many, including myself, use liquid soaps and shower gels, but if you add solid soaps to your daily routine, they will be used up quickly, and having them in stock won't hurt. Furthermore, they can become a subject for barter. Vinegar and some cleaning agents should also be mentioned. Vinegar is useful not only for cleaning but also in various other situations. Cleaning agents like bleach should not be stored in large quantities due to their short shelf life, but products like pool shock can last a long time. Many cleaning agents have a long shelf life, and you can stock up on them. Trash bags are another item that will never be unnecessary, as they have many uses. In situations where hygiene is important, disposing of waste and garbage plays a critical role in avoiding diseases. Therefore, it's worth paying attention to these hygiene items. 5-gallon buckets can be a great solution. They can be turned into toilets, and I never throw away such buckets. I even bought a few. They're conveniently stored in the garage, and you never know when they might be needed for food storage or other reasons. Having such buckets and hygiene products, as I mentioned before, is really useful. If you have many, you may still want more, and you won't regret having them. I mentioned earlier that I saved the best for last, and this refers to education and training. You may have first aid kits and firearms, but it is education and training that significantly enhance your ability to handle various situations. Studying various disaster scenarios and understanding how they can unfold will give you a better idea of how to act in a specific situation. Education and training play a critical role, and their importance is hard to overestimate, whether it is first aid, handling firearms, or simply learning the basics of preparedness for various situations. Understanding what you might need to do in different circumstances is extremely important. It is also important to keep track of current events. I mean, it is not necessary to watch the news, as the information provided there may be incomplete or distorted. Instead, it is important to be aware of possible threats, to understand whether they are increasing or decreasing, and what to pay attention to. Consider your local area and your personal situation. Knowledge of these aspects will help you cope with difficulties and allocate resources properly. By studying various scenarios and preparing for them, you can adapt to your needs rather than follow the general trends imposed by the internet. As can be seen from this list, most items do not require significant investments and can be acquired gradually, except for some expensive energy sources. Many of these items can also be used for barter trading if such a situation arises, and many of them have multiple uses in your preparedness plan. Recently, I made a video about 20 inexpensive items that can be stocked and used for exchange. If you want, you can take a look at it. I will conclude here. If you have any comments or suggestions, leave them below. Take care and prepare. Have a good day, everyone.